Okay, so I moved to Ramallah almost 2 years ago, August 2012, so it'll be 2 years at the end of this summer. And I started teaching at the Friends School there. It's a Quaker school, elementary and high school. I was teaching at the high school. It's been around since the late 1800s. And I was ecstatic, to say the least. I just graduated from the MA program at Georgetown, and the last place in the world I wanted to be was job hunting in DC. So when the application went through and I was offered to teach 9th grade English at the Friends School in Ramallah, it was as if my dream had sort of been handed to me on a silver platter. So I packed up my life and I hopped on a plane, and shortly after I arrived, the Friends School, through USAID, a government agency, applied for multiple entry visas for all of the international school teachers who lived there. We all received 1-year multiple entry visas, and we were told that we were free to come and go as we pleased, as long as we stayed within the confines of the dates of the visa. As long as the visa was still valid, we were fine. And we also were given residency permits for the West Bank as well as Israel, so I was not confined to residency within the Ramallah area. I taught 9th grade English, and I had 3 classes of 30 kids, 5 days a week. And so as much as I loved my kids, suffice it to say by Christmas break, I was ready for a break. And I needed to get away for a few days. So I did that. I took a break to Jordan for about 10 days. And when I went back to the Allenby Bridge, I was made to wait and questioned for 7 hours. And after that wait, with no explanation, I was denied entry and sent back to Jordan on a bus. While at Allenby, I spent 5 of those hours past the closing of the border itself. I was the only non-Israeli employee within miles of the buffer zone of the border. And when I told the security official who would come out to ask me 1 or 2 questions, which I might add, she knew the answers to because they were all questions that were on my original visa application. Every few hours that I had spoken to someone from USAID at the embassy, or that I was in touch with a lawyer, she told me, "I don't care about you or your government." After I was finally told I was being denied entry, my passport was held until I went back through Jordanian intelligence. After 2 months of being stranded in Jordan and grading my students' finals from afar and sending lesson plans to a substitute, I returned a second time, this time with coordination from the Israeli embassy here in DC, as well as my congresswoman, and was again denied, detained, and deported, and then denied an emergency appeal. When I was in the detention center, a representative called me, not from the embassy in Tel Aviv, but the consulate in Jerusalem. And when I told him what was happening, he said to me, "When it comes to Israel, there is nothing we can do." Now, I'm happy to answer questions about the appeal and the case and what the detention center is like, what the jail cell is like, and these kinds of details about denial scenarios. But I want to focus on something that I think will resonate more with the kind of language that's used here on Capitol Hill. Reciprocity is the magic word in diplomatic affairs, and the one that continues to lead the debate regarding Israel's induction to the Visa Waiver Program. Reciprocity is defined as a situation or relationship in which 2 people or groups agree to do something similar for each other to allow each other to have the same rights. So let's try something new today. Let's play out a scenario in which the United States gives the same rights to travelers that Israel gives to Americans at its borders. Picture this. An Israeli citizen approaches U.S. Customs, and though U.S. law states that Israeli passport holders are to receive 3-month tourist visas on arrival, the following occurs. Before landing, the Israeli citizen will have had to live a life in which he or she has never made a single public statement regarding their personal identity or politics that could come across as disagreeing with U.S. state policy. One step in order to do this will be to delete any online profiles. Secondary emails will need to be set up in case a U.S. Customs official asks to log in to the traveler's private email account, so the U.S. official can arbitrarily peruse personal correspondence. Upon arrival, when U.S. Passport Control asks the purpose of the Israeli citizen's visit and where the visitor will be staying, standard questions anywhere to be fair, the Israeli citizen will then need to be very careful of the name he or she provides. Preferably, the contact person should be older, not young, and more importantly, the American citizen should be white and Christian. this white Christian American citizen will be called and asked to vouch for the person coming in. If the traveler provides a name of a Hispanic, Arab, Asian, or individual of any threatening ethnicity or religion, our hypothetical visitor will be subject to further questioning and/or search. Sometimes this will happen if the person already has a valid visa issued by the government in question, as was the case with my entry to Matt. Most importantly, at no point in this process will the Israeli citizen have the support of the Israeli embassy or government to advocate on his or her behalf. The arriving Israeli will be told that there is nothing the Israeli embassy or government at large can do to help. Is this starting to sound outrageous and offensive yet? That it would be okay for the US government to treat Israeli citizens that way? Because that, my friends, is the tip of the iceberg of what American citizens endure at Israeli borders and Ben Gurion Airport. To hold an Arab name or to provide the name of any Palestinian immediately places visitors in a suspect category. If you do not provide a non-threatening Jewish name as your host, you will be placed in a suspect category. Do not be fooled, a non-Muslim name will not suffice, as Christian Palestinians will also place you under suspicion. If you are denied, don't bother contacting the US Embassy. They will call you when you arrive at the detention center, a nice word for jail for foreigners. Don't get too excited. They will be calling to make sure you are uninjured and being given water. But they will be sure to remind you that when it comes to Israel, there is nothing they can do. Disclaimer, if you are a Palestinian American, even if you hold no other citizenship or identification, the embassy might not think you are American enough, in which case the consulate in Jerusalem will give you a call. American citizens are subject to interrogations, long waits, strip searches, and if denied entry, fingerprinting and detention, as if common criminals, all while never having been accused of any transgression. I know this happens because I've experienced it. I know this happens because any time any person of color or conscience crosses an Israeli border, he or she asks a friend for advice. They ask out of fear. For some, this fear is realized in a canceled trip and financial burden at being forced to pay for their own deportation. And for others, worse still, it is a disruption of their entire lives. Israel's induction into the Visa Waiver Program would codify rather than challenge Israel's discriminatory policies towards US citizens at their controlled borders. The call to not include Israel in the Visa Waiver Program is not about one clause in or one clause out. It is about the need to affirm basic human decency. It is about congressional representatives and senators listening to its own Department of State, which regularly reminds it that Israel indeed engages in discrimination and denial of American citizens, both arbitrarily and based on race and religion. By rewarding Israel with entry into the US Visa Waiver Program, Israeli citizens will come and go to the US as they please, while American citizens will continue to be denied entry to Israel arbitrarily and often on the basis of religious, racial, or political affiliation. How do I know it will continue? Because elected officials are not discussing a mechanism on how to stop it. There is no discussion of how to actually track when Israel will meet the State Department guidelines for entry, let alone tracking whether or not Israel will comply with the guidelines to treat American citizens equally. And until these issues are dealt with fully, there should be no bill that passes on the issue with any sort of language at all. Thank you.